Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Dairy Raid and another morning constitutional on a beautiful Monday morning. The reason why you're not seeing me out in nature on this beautiful Monday morning, at least for this intro, is the clip that I used to record the intro corrupted, and I'm able to recover it. So we're sitting here in the editing suite, and we're just going to re-record what was in this intro. So we are in preview season for college football. Week 0 was this last weekend. The Badgers play their first game on Friday night. So it's our turn to throw our hat in the ring for the preview episode like everybody else, and that everyone else does better than me. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do it in the type of style that I like to do. A little bit off topic, a little bit more philosophical, a little more scheme based than your typical depth chart season outlook type of preview. So that's what we're going to do here. I think it's 10 questions that I came up with talking about the personnel of the Wisconsin offense, but more importantly, and how the scheme and how the system fits around them. So that's what we're going to get into here. So without further ado, join my past self as we're walking around the neighborhood previewing the 2024 Wisconsin offense. And the first question I have here is, with the offense playing at such a fast tempo, what are some of the advantages and the disadvantages from an offensive line point of view of playing in a fast-paced offense? Well, let's start with the disadvantages, because I think that's what everyone gravitates towards when you see offenses working at a faster tempo than the quote-unquote normal. And if you look at the difference between the Badgers' clock use and number of plays ran in the past in comparison to this last season, there's not much of a difference. You know, the Badgers were in the high 60s in terms of number of plays called in a particular game in the Paul Chryst era, and they were at 71 last year. I think the big why they're closer this year or this last season had a lot to do with the change in the clock rules on first downs. Clocks don't stop anymore. But the disadvantages, obviously, when you play at tempo and you're not going into the huddle, are you have to simplify everything. You have to simplify the play calling, the terminology, etc. For the offensive line, you get less time to work on line calls, less time to read the defense and set up your blocking scheme pre-snap. That can be difficult, especially when you play against defenses that move around a lot, and we've seen that this last season. We saw it playing against our own defense in the spring game last year, and it fed into last season. Obviously, when you have a group of linemen who are not up to speed when it comes to playing at tempo, in terms of speed and conditioning, you're going to create issues. But it comes down to, it just makes every decision have to be more instinctual and have less to do with thinking and anticipating. It's got to have a lot more to do with reacting. For the advantages, almost everything that I just said there can also be seen as an advantage. Meaning, like I've said before, a lot of offensive football is needlessly complicated. And by simplifying terminology and simplifying the delivery of that terminology, you are forced as an offense to trim the fat. And when you trim the fat that is unnecessary, it allows you to play with, again, more instincts, because you don't have to think as much. And it forces you to take those instincts and trust what you've been taught. Trust your footwork. Trust the progression, whatever you want to say. So the advantages of playing at tempo for the offensive line is it simplifies things for you and what you're asked to do, but it also simplifies what the defense has to do because they have less time to adjust, less time to substitute, less time to get ready for the offense. So a lot of times when you play defenses that are not used to playing against tempo, they play a really simplified and broken down version of their defense. So the advantages and the disadvantages are all in the same category. It just depends on how you see the challenges that come with playing at tempo. All right, so that is the first question. Next question. We have heard a lot about Tyler Van Dyke needing to come out of his shell and needing to be a more boisterous leader. How important is that for an offense to succeed? You know, it can be difficult to say because there are a lot of players who choose to lead by example. They do the work, they succeed, they show you how it's done. That's how they lead. And then there are some rah-rah guys. Every team are filled with both. I think you need to have a quarterback who instills confidence in his roster. You need a quarterback who's confident in his own abilities, and he has the confidence to do what needs to be done to succeed. I think Tyler Van Dyke has all those qualities. Is he going to be the rah-rah guy on the sideline? He doesn't have to be. As long as his teammates accept him and they follow his example, that's what a leader can be. They got plenty of rah-rah guys on the roster that they don't necessarily need to have another one who is that type. That isn't to say that Tyler can't come out of his shell a little bit, and that might help take some pressure off of him. Because you'd be surprised, wait for the garbage truck to go by, you'd be surprised at how good you feel and how loose you feel after yelling out a good scream or leading a cheer in practice or at a game. So we'll see what it does for him. I hope he can come out of his shell a little bit, but I hope he doesn't change who he is to fit a mold that someone else expects him to be in. Next up, let's talk about the running game and how can traditional Wisconsin values in terms of a running game be applied and be successful in the modern offense and the air raid. Well, I think if you just go ahead and take a look at what happened on Saturday when Georgia Tech beat Florida State in Dublin, what you saw was a clinic on the modern run game. Movement, using backs in different ways, using motion to set up plays, everything. And it was still downhill power football. Something that the Badgers have been known for and something that the Badgers will continue to be known for. It comes down to executing. And I think last year, the big problem is we still tried to follow traditional Wisconsin values. We just didn't have the horses who could do it when Braylon was hurt and when Ches was hurt. So the mentality and the philosophy doesn't have to change just because you're running a different offense. The modern run game looks way more like Wisconsin did last year than Wisconsin did in 2022. And if you look at the top rushing teams in college football, outside of the service academies, who have been spending a lot more time in the shotgun and have been resembling more modern offenses than they have in the past, that's how offenses are now. It's not let's get under center and go two tight ends and a fullback and pound the ball up the middle. The run the rock crowd, it should be about the outcome, not how you get there. And if I can do a better job of creating space for my ball carriers by formation and by alignment, then I'm going to do that. And that's what they tried to do. And if the backfield doesn't fall into the same pitfalls it did last year with lack of depth, which I don't think it will, we're talking about that the rushing attack this year is going to be a six-headed monster, then we shouldn't have an issue. Old school mentality is alive and well in college football, and it's alive and well in Madison. It just comes down to execution. All right, next up, and talk about the wide receivers. What are the lessons we learned from last season, and how can they be applied to the passing game so we don't have a repeat of last year, where even by Wisconsin standards, the passing game underwhelmed? Well, I think we saw last year the importance of the vertical aspect of the passing game and having a quarterback willing to pull a trigger on the deeper routes. I've spent the last couple days here going through some film from last season from a different point of view, different angle. And if you saw my little preview that I put up on YouTube the other day, you might have an idea of what that new angle is going to be. I looked at a lot of the routes and a lot of the plays from last season, trying to figure out who was at fault for the lack of a vertical passing game. And I tell you, it was, I'd say, almost 50-50. Quarterback not willing to pull the trigger and not being aggressive enough where windows were tight but windows were open. And receivers who had a poor ability of finding leverage and finding space and getting off of coverage. That has to improve. I think number one, we fixed the unwillingness to pull the trigger problem, because I don't think that's going to be an issue for Tyler Van Dyke. I think he's going to pull the trigger whether we like it or not. And I'm excited about that. And receivers, I have a lot of confidence in Kenny Guyton as a coach. I have a lot of confidence that he's been able to take the guys he's had and to improve their skill set. So when you take those two factors into consideration, I hope that the upper end of the passing game will be able to expand, and in turn that is going to improve the entire passing game. Again, the air raid is about creating vertical and horizontal stresses. We created a lot of horizontal stress last year, and all we did was create the stress and then let the coverage come down on us for minimal gain. So I'm hoping that's improved this year. Next up, with the emergence of Treach, guys like Treach, and the expanded running back room, what is this going to say about the role of the tight end in 2024 for the Badgers? I think last season with the tight ends, we had a lot of issues with that can be simply boiled down to our tight end room started the 2024 season with their third string tight end in the number one spot. Hayden Rucci should have been number 3 last year behind Clay Cundiff and Jack Pugh. He was number 3. And Tucker Ashcraft shouldn't even played. And Riley Nowakowski should have been a situational fullback, H-back type, etc., etc. So, when we look at the room, I think we have better options in the passing game at the top of the room now. I think Tucker Ashcraft is stronger. faster. He's going to be a better blocker. He's already a pretty solid receiver. Jackson McGowan is going to be your big slot pass catching type. You're going to have Riley Nowakowski be able to be in that situational fullback role that he should have been in last year and not been an every down tight end. And putting all of this together, from a place point of view, the tight end room should be improved. But we do have a six-headed monster in the running back room. And we do have the emergence of more receivers, more slot receivers, and receivers that should be on the field at the same time. So I think the number of plays that we are sitting out there in 11 personnel is going to go down. I'm not going to put a number on it, but I think it will. I think we're going to see an increase in the number of multiple tight end sets, but that's going to come in correspondence with multiple running back sets. I think some of the opportunities in basic package situations are going to go down for the tight ends. I think their roles and their reps in situational packages is going to go up. So I think we're going to get a balance there. We're going to see more 10 personnel. We're going to see more situational tight end use. We're going to see more blocking situations. We're going to see more short yardage passing situations. It'll balance out. I think the tight end numbers will get better than last year, but also the receiver numbers and the running back and the use of 10 personnel, use of 20 personnel, even 30 personnel is going to go up a lot. And that will affect the stats of the running backs, or excuse me, the tight ends. All right, going to change walking direction now because I'm not going to walk towards the guy mowing the lawn because it's Monday morning. Of course, that's when everyone's mowing the lawn, right? All right, so next question. Do I expect to see changes in tempo this season? Did the Badgers play too fast last year? And how can we improve upon that? I expect tempo to change this year. I expect the tempo to go faster. Like I said, talking about the offensive line and the effective tempo on the offensive line, needing to go in the huddle and needing to slow things down, it's not necessary in college football anymore. You can control the clock and be in no huddle. You can control the tempo and snap the ball at 15 seconds. You can control the tempo and not go in the huddle and still snap the ball at 1 second left on the play clock. When you run an offense that is based on tempo, you set the tempo. And when you set the tempo, it's going to be to your advantage. So I don't expect the offense to slow down at all this year. In fact, I expect it to speed up. Everyone's faster. Everyone knows the system better. Everyone's going to be more efficient. There's no need to slow down. It's not going to make the offense better to slow down. Next up, Chez Mellusi. What is his role going to be in 2024 when he's not going to be the feature back? And I think with the idea of a feature back, 2024 is going to be the first year in a few years that we're not going to have a feature back, a true number one getting the majority of the carries. Because I think this is the prime opportunity to move away from that philosophy and use last year as an example of why we can't have a deep running back room and why we can't be afraid we cannot afford to be afraid to utilize a deep running back room. Is when you build an offense around a feature back and the feature back gets injured, or the one beat back also gets injured, and you're down to your third and fourth backs who are only supposed to be situational players anyways, you're going to create problems. So that's something that is being addressed. I think at the end of the day, I think Ches will have the most touches in the running back room. I think Tui Walker will have the most carries in the running back room. And we're going to see contributions from 4, 5, 6 running backs on a regular basis. I think they're going to be smart with the usage of the young guys so they can preserve red shirts as much as possible, but giving the kids enough playing time that they feel like they have a role and that they should be staying at Wisconsin instead of exploring the transfer portal down the road. Next up, CJ Williams. What does he have to do in 2024 to improve and to expand his role? And I think it just comes down to consistency. He showed some awesome flashes last season. He has great hands. He is a pretty good route runner. He has good speeds for his size. But last year, despite that, he had real problems with being consistent when he was playing against a physical defender. You could really see in his body language when he took on physical defenders how much problems he had. And by all accounts, he's building a good rapport with Tyler Van Dyke and hopefully building some trust. And when you build trust, trust goes both ways. And it's good that someone trusts you, but then you also have to keep that trust. And CJ's a hard worker, and I'm expecting him to live up to the role that he was brought here to do in an air raid offense where we spread the ball around. That might be a week-to-week thing that changes, but I want to see his body language improve, and I want to see his ability to be physical improve this season. All right, and finally, the last question. What is Luke Fickell's role going to be in the growth of the offense in 2024? Luke Fickell is a defensive-minded head coach. And a lot of times when you see head coaches who are on one side of the ball, they tend to find a strong person to take over the other side of the ball, and they just don't care. And they let the offense be the offense, the defense be the defense, and they focus on their side of the ball. Luke Fickell isn't going to do that. I think Luke Fickell, one of his strongest suits of his ability as a head coach is how he is as a program leader and as the figurehead of the program. And I don't think he's going to let anything that happened with the offense last year negatively allow that to continue this year. He's the head coach. And as a head coach, you need to send the mandate down to your assistants of how things need to be. I think some of the things that he's going to be asking for this season is a better commitment to the running game without banging your head against the wall. When something's not going to work, you need to work on improving. Last season when we lost Braylon and Ches, they really dumbed down the running game. And I think they need to move away from that. And instead of dumbing it down, they need to expand upon it. Also, in the passing game, I think you're going to see a bigger push towards stuff that, as a defensive coach, would drive you insane. Okay, which is movement, reads, putting players in conflict. And as a program leader, that's going to be his job. What Luke Fickell was strongest at Cincinnati was taking stock on a season and then getting into the next season, asking questions about what we did wrong and how we can improve that. Asking the questions that can be solved to improve the team next season. We saw that with his defense. The evolution of his defense at Cincinnati was a year-by-year process, and it was all about asking questions. How can we solve the Navy question? How can we solve the Memphis question? How can we solve the UCF question? I think you're going to see that same philosophy applied to the offense this year. How can we solve the Iowa problem? How can we solve the Ohio State problem? How can we solve the Northwestern problem? What are those questions? What are those problems? We'll get into that later. But yes, he's not going to be sitting there with a notepad handing plays to Phil Longo. He's going to be sitting there with Phil Longo and asking questions and empowering Phil Longo with the ability to answer those questions and to improve. And that's where we're going. All right. I think that's about enough. I think I've gone through all my questions. And I'm ready for Friday night, or for me, Saturday morning. I have a game Saturday, so I can't stay up all night Friday night to watch the Badgers. I hope to wake up Saturday morning and seeing a nice healthy score on the scoreboard. And I look forward to watching the film over the weekend and getting ready for our first breakdown of the 2024 season, which I'm hoping, fingers crossed, will be released on Tuesday. And I'm going to put out a brief video on Monday laying out how the 2024 season is going to go for the Dairy Raid and how we're going to expect things to go going forward. All right, so that's it for today. Next time we do one of these morning constitutionals will be next Monday morning, talking about Western Michigan and looking forward to South Dakota. So until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.